politics lead now. Was Donald Trump having second thoughts? That's the big question today. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee officially announced that he had picked Indiana Governor Mike Pence to be his running mate. But our own Dana Bash is learning that late last night, Trump was asking if there was possibly any way he could back out of the Pence pick. Dana, what happened here?
Well, look, in picking Mike Pence, and we've been talking about this since it became clear it was going to be him yesterday, Donald Trump is following the political advice of people around him, of his advisors, doing what is practical, where you know him, and you've been following him enough to know that he genuinely follows his gut. He's been doing that, and that has been the
Pence is more a pick of the head than the gut.
Precisely, exactly. So I'm told at about midnight last night, after he'd already offered the job to Mike Pence.
And Pence had flown to New York City.
And Pence had flown to New York City, prepared to scrap his plans for re-election in Indiana for governor there, that Trump was on the phone with senior advisors saying, is this for sure done deal? Is there any way that this can be undone? Not saying he wanted it to be undone, but musing about whether it could be and questioning it. He was told no. Now, again, what this tells us is that this is a man who is not used to going with decisions and making decisions that he doesn't feel right here.
Right.
Going with decisions that people around him say the right thing to do. It also kind of played out last night, Jake, because he did a phone interview with Greta Van Susteren and Fox after he had offered the job to Mike Pence, saying that he had not made a final decision.
Interesting. What about Mike Pence himself? He was in New York, and he purportedly, from what I understand, heard about what Trump said to Greta Van Susteren in front of her viewers about the fact that he had not made a final decision.
I'm told that there was a frantic call to an aide who was with Mike Pence, and he was sitting in the Intercontinental Hotel in Manhattan, just kind of waiting and waiting for what they thought was going to be an announcement this morning, which didn't happen because it was postponed because of the attacks in France. But I am told that that frantic call came and that Pence himself remained calm, and that he said that he believes that Donald Trump is somebody who is true to his word. But people who are close to Pence and are worried about Pence and his political status and future were not as calm because, as we said, he gave up his re-election campaign. They prepared papers, which they ended up filing today. The deadline was noon today to withdraw from the Indiana ballot. He was completely changing his life in order to make this happen. And they weren't sure that was going to be the case. Obviously, today, with the tweet, it was.
Let's bring in CNN contributor Mary Catherine Ham. Mary Catherine, all that said, the Pence pick among conservatives and among House and Senate Republicans seems to be received pretty well.
Yeah, I think the consensus is it's a fine pick. I think it's a bit surprising because it feels not very entertaining, which is what you would have gotten with a Newt Gingrich or even a Christie, who's certainly an attack dog. But I think this experience is probably good training for the next 4 months of Mike Pence's life, because this is what he'll be doing. He'll have a team that's panicking every time Trump says something off the wall, and it's his job to come out and figure out how to defend that. And that is going to be the next 4 months. And the idea that Trump is going to gain some sort of cohesive strategy and a campaign that's working in the traditional sense that would allow Mike Pence to know what path he is walking, that's not happening anytime soon.
Dana, what about Chris Christie? As recently as last night, Donald Trump was still talking about Chris Christie as a possibility, even though he had already offered the job to Pence.
That's right. And I think that this sort of Hamlet-like actions that we have seen, or at least heard about, actually we can say seen, because we've seen it play out in the public interviews that Donald Trump has been doing. I think a big part of that is, as we talked about, going with his gut, and his gut being more likely to choose Chris Christie because they are so close.
They've been friends for years.
For almost 15 years. And more importantly, Chris Christie endorsed him before he was the nominee, when it was politically unpalatable, and maybe still is for Christie to do that. He's been a very important confidant behind the scenes to Trump. And interestingly, Jake, what I'm hearing is that, you wouldn't know this from his public persona, but Donald Trump does not like confrontation behind the scenes with people who he cares about and is loyal to and is friends with. People cross him, that's different. But he did not like the idea of telling Chris Christie he was not going to be his running mate.
And Mary Catherine, that's not the only bit of intrigue surrounding the Pence announcement. Republican strategist Dan Senor tweeted something today clearly aimed at Pence. Quote, "It's disorienting to have had commiserated with somebody regarding Trump about how he was unacceptable, and then to see that someone become Trump's VP."
Yes.
We should point out Dan Senor is he used to be a member of the Bush administration. This is a mainstream Republican, although he is not a Trump supporter.
Yeah, well, welcome to 2016. I'm not terribly surprised that they had this conversation and now Pence is here. But if you look at Pence's resume, as a pretty solid conservative over the years, even in the Bush years being one of a very small clutch of committed conservatives who stood up against the Medicare expansion and No Child Left Behind, and now we're here. Now, there have been some parts of his governorship that conservatives have been upset with the Medicaid expansion and his failure to defend RFRA in Indiana. So perhaps he's been moving in that direction, but it's surprising.
Very, very fascinating, and it's only July. Dana Bash, Mary Catherine Ham, thank you so much.